we need to make every part of the game a set piece kind of thing where we all have a duty, and if that duty can't be performed, then I'm stuck. I don't think that produces kind of resilient, thoughtful players over time. Football is to be that little bit freer, that little bit more expressive, and therefore I've kind of thrown the patterns out for principles quite a long time ago now, really. I found that you would have to wait 5 or 6 actions, like really specific actions. So the ball goes from the goalkeeper to the centre back, and our striker will press the centre back this way, and then the ball will go there, and then you stop this pass. And it became like this shopping list of stuff that you're lucky if you get down to the item that says press and win the ball, right? Coach development for me is kind of every day. It's every moment of every day. And that doesn't mean my head is stuck in something. It means that because it's central to, it's your passion, and it's your passion and your profession, it very rarely leaves you.
Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach podcast. This week, we are joined by Ray Power. We start the conversation off talking about Ray's change philosophy on pressing. He has recently done a fantastic, outstanding webinar on the Modern Soccer Coach Insider platform for members only. So if you want the access to that presentation, you want to join the Insider, get all the webinars, exclusive members only content, and the content we have every week, plus with a WhatsApp group. I will put the link below for the MSC Insider. The conversation then moves to coaching philosophies. Of course, we discuss Ange Postecoglou, whether coaching is going crazy, philosophy versus pragmatism, how do you balance both? And then we get into coaching support. Ray's doing an outstanding job in coach support and bringing coaches together. He's got a new project that he discusses, and the link below is to that as well. So please check out Ray's work. It's always brilliant to have him on the podcast. Really appreciate all your support. Before we start, please make sure you like, please make sure you subscribe, please make sure you check out Modern Soccer Coach Insider. Thank you so much. Here is Ray. Enjoy. Ray, thanks so much for joining us again on the MSC podcast. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. You said earlier on it's the hat trick, yeah?
The hat trick, yeah, I was thinking about getting match balls printed up and getting this custom thing and sending it to you like they used to do for the Ballon d'Or. And then I thought, shipping costs today, Ray, about a fortune.
Listen, you've said it now. You've been to Brazil and Italy. Where else have you been? You've got a budget. We know it.
You got a budget. All right, lots to talk about today. Rethinking pressing traps was the presentation you put together on for the MSC Insiders. Absolutely brilliant. I've going to talk about it before and the links and all that good stuff. But I want to talk about the concept around your thinking about it. It made me think for 2 reasons. And I'll go through the first one now and then get your thoughts on it. I haven't seen much progression on the concept of pressing over the last 5 years. A lot of the topics, I didn't think about this to your presentation. It's like, oh wow, a lot of the topics I've seen, advances in the game, progressions, have all been through in possession. And I wonder if you think the out of possession, if pressing has kind of stalled a little bit and it's just gone man to man, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's last couple of years. It's certainly there's a lot more man to man stuff going on, especially from a dead ball, especially from the keeper, and then probably by the time you're defending your final third, it's very kind of zonal or man in a zone kind of feel to it. There was certainly, and I don't know dates and stuff like that, but there was certainly an upswing in how pressing was perceived, because probably when I first started coaching, and a legacy of when I stopped playing, was that I was a midfielder and the opposite midfielder was my man. That was my duty. And then it kind of evolved to this idea that you did your defensive duty and you did half of your teammates. So you have this kind of job and a half kind of thing, especially out of possession. Um, and then it became this thing that I found myself explaining to players who had come through academies, probably over that last 5 years, that yes, you will have a man or a priority or a defensive necessity at a time, but it's probably one of three or four that you might end up doing depending on what happens next. Um, there was a really, really good presentation that John McKenzie did. I'm sure you know John's work on the athletic and various other bits. He came into us and he did a presentation on, he called it hybrid pressing. So the idea was that you had multiple or more than one um, pressing responsibilities or out of possession responsibilities. And he showed a clip of Gabriel Martinelli being on the weak side, if that makes sense. I don't know what they call it in the States, but not on the ball side. Um, and he did a freeze frame, and Martinelli, depending on where the ball went, Martinelli could have done what you would expect a winger to do and press the immediate fullback. He was sat on a midfield player. He could have went to the centre half all the way, and they were playing against Man City, all the way to Kevin De Bruyne, who was in a number 10 position. So here you had a left winger who, in a moment, may have responsibility for picking up or being closest to the opposition's number 10. And I thought to myself, okay, wow, this is, we need to get amongst this a little bit more and help players get amongst that a little bit more. Again, rather than the kind of the old school idea that fullback and winger, centre back and striker, 2v2, 3v3 in midfield, that it was far more vibrant than that. And probably sent me down that rabbit hole you spoke about at the start.
Yeah, it got me thinking. Well, obviously, the content in the presentation got me thinking a lot as it progressed. But even before I opened it with the topic, I'm thinking, why have I not looked at that closer? The concept of patterns being, everyone talks about pre-programming players, robotic football, again, as an in possession, yet pressing is generally talking about as A to B, B to C, to match it up, get that sorted, fine, out you go, work hard. And
Yeah.
and I thought, well, what's your thoughts on this? I thought Enrique's PSG, I thought that would have lifted another level of conversation around pressing. But it doesn't seem to have.
Yeah, look at it. It may well do. As we know, these things come quite cyclical because to be fair, everyone looks at Enrique first of all for the in possession stuff as much as anything. So, um, look, when I first scratched my head around it, and I'm going back quite a number of years, the idea of not just pressing but a pressing trap. Getting the ball to a player or into an area that you wanted it to go. That's not new. We always had that show them inside, show them outside, all that sort of stuff. But when, like, give you a scenario where the opposition goalkeeper has the ball, okay, and the pressing traps that we normally found were ones where we would trap a fullback, we'll say on the outside, or um, we end up winning the ball near the touchline because we've got a touchline as a defender, all that sort of stuff. And that never really interested me. And when I did try to do it, I found that you would have to wait 5 or 6 actions, like really specific actions. So the ball goes from the goalkeeper to the centre back, and our striker will press the centre back this way, and then the ball will go there, and then you stop this pass. And it became like this shopping list of stuff that you're lucky if you get down to the item that says press and win the ball, right? And this is just me being really honest. I told no one at the time because I just felt I didn't understand it. And I felt I could rarely get to the point where we're winning the ball. And then when I did, we were kind of locked ourselves to the touchline. That sort of that idea that if you are pressing a fullback who's got half a pitch to play into rather than a full pitch. And I kind of ripped it all up. I said, I've got to do this differently. I can't rely on this shopping list kind of thing. So what is it you do want? And I didn't want to win the ball back at the touchline. I wanted to win it back inside the pitch. I wanted to high up inside the pitch. You're probably not going to trap a team into their own box. Probably not. But you could probably tempt them to play into midfield. And the idea was that we would set up these conditions that tempted, particularly centre backs, to play into midfield and then jump all over them, win the ball back, central to goal. Hopefully, they're a little bit bigger or more disorganized than they normally would be. Um, and what I call pressing momentum. So the pressing momentum is a, a midfielder. It's probably the best picture you could get is a midfielder jumping on top of an opposite midfielder, winning the ball, and his flow or his physical momentum is taking him to goal rather than off the pitch. Sometimes when you're pressing out wide, so that was important. So that all the conditions that I wanted in my head, I wanted to get out on the pitch, and I again found that I couldn't do it with the shopping list idea. It was always going to be some ideas, some principles. So I call it principles versus patterns. Some principles that would allow us to do that more, and hopefully to capitalize on it, and ultimately get some success out of it. Um, and having gone through that process, just myself, that thinking process where I wasn't trying to copy anyone else. I wasn't looking at a body of work saying, if I don't do it this way, and that might be PSG, it might be Arsenal or whatever. Sometimes coaches think, no, no, no. For a pressing trap, you must use the touchline, you must go to the fullback, you must do it this way. I thought, well, what is it I want? So I want to win the ball back somewhere where I can score quite quickly or try to score quite quickly, and kind of reverse engineered it from that. And yeah, one of the best kind of self-induced learning things that I did. And I took the players along with me, that sort of way.
Yeah, it's really interesting moving from, like your reference, moving from patterns into principles. Um, and I think every coach would be listening to this, going, "Yeah, yeah, no, I'm with that there." But then when you put that into action on the training pitch, it's harder. It's a lot harder work. Um, where you don't have the patterns.
Yeah, like the I'm properly at an end of a spectrum where the idea of a pattern in football that's so complex kind of um it annoys me more than it should, if you know what I mean. Like, when you hear, um, when my fullback gets the ball, I want first pass to be this, second pass to be the winger, third pass to be that, fourth pass, and then you go, okay, so what if those four things are unavailable? Like, my fullback's pockets are empty. What do you want now? And that real prescriptive football, I don't know where it stems from exactly. I just there's no beauty in it for me. You know what I mean? There's no indulgence or creativity in it. Now, every fullback will tell you, every good half decent fullback will tell you what options they'll probably see in front of them when they get possession of the ball. But there's so much in between them getting the ball and them using it, from the pressure they're under, from the opposition they're playing, from whatever. Now, I still want a midfield player to become available to him or her. That's still a necessity. You still want a forward passing option, all that kind of stuff. But instead of it being option number two, let's say, is give it to the winger on the touchline. Well, maybe the winger is an option, but he or she could be inside or outside, maybe the shorter or longer, or maybe they develop some sort of communication between them that dictates what that next move will be. So the principle in that case might be, can fullback and winger combine more often in more ways or something like that, and let them go explore what that looks like. Because on the other hand, if I'm defending that, I'm I'm quite happy to defend that. Fullback is going to go one of four places. You don't need any sort of pressing worldly tactics to sort of combat that. Certainly, as an idea. So my idea of football is to be that little bit freer, that little bit more expressive, um, and therefore I've kind of thrown the patterns out for principles quite a long time ago now, really.
I went to a game at the weekend. It was a college game, Division One college game. I was about 10 rows up. There wasn't a lot of people there. I was enjoying it. There was team play one way first half, played another way second half. Other team had Whitey Cheese, it was team at success press in the first half. So I'm sitting beside the bench in the second half, and the coach is working it out, but the players are talking to the coach, which again, like I would, you'd say, okay, this is great. There's communication happening and it's elite level over here. So it's looking at saying, oh, okay, what type of conversation? All the conversations we're seeing, every player was going to the coach. My player's doing this. What do you want me to do?
Right.
And I don't know how I feel about the fact that, again, one, it's a good conversation, but two, are they really trying to solve the problem, or are you just looking at your player? And what would I be doing, or what would I be thinking as a coach standing on that sideline is like, if I have five players asking me, what do you want me to do with my player? It's a, that's a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, that for me would be a little bit of a red flag. To be fair, the green flag would be the fact that they're having these, like you say, that they're free and they feel free to ask the question and all that sort of stuff. But if it does feel very playbooky, and I'm not just saying that because of the obviously being in the US, but it just feels that kind of we need to make every part of the game a set piece kind of thing where we all have a duty, and if that duty can't be performed, then I'm stuck. I don't think that produces kind of resilient, thoughtful players over time, but it's probably over time that they've picked that up. If it's a college game and they're all, what are they, 20, 21,
Yeah.
early 20s, late teens, early 20s, they're probably it would suggest they're either a lifetime in football having a coach solve all the problems. The coach is the centerpiece of it all, the all-seeing eye, that kind of thing. Whereas I think from what me and you do on a regular basis, and that is sort of speak to people globally about the game, we can see a big change in that over the last few years of it being a far more dynamic process than that, far more hopefully your training program would allow players to make more decisions and fail more and have more than kind of one thing on their checklist to solve a problem. And I'd like to think it can still go that way, but it's a complex game, football. It really is as complex as any of them. So to have a sort of a tick list of solutions to problems, I think gets you in trouble. You know,
Hello, coaches. We'll take a quick break here. As always, I really, really appreciate your support on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. If you're enjoying this conversation and you want to check out Ray's full webinar that he done on Modern Soccer Coach Insider, the pressing principles versus pressing patterns, please check that out. The Modern Soccer Coach Insider. I will put the link below. The MSC Insider has all our webinars over the last 8 years. All of them are available to watch on demand. We also have a ton of coaching content on there as well. And we have new bonus content coming up every week on that platform. And then finally, you get access to the WhatsApp group where we share more coaching content and we allow you to shape the conversation with requests. And we have some chats on there as well. So I really appreciate all the support. Please check out the Insider. Please check out Ray's work. Thanks so much. Back to the podcast. I would agree. I would agree. And you said earlier that you don't know where, or you said, I wonder where it comes from, the kind of reliance on that type of coaching. But I mean, I think what I see today is that a lot of coaches are risk averse. I was listening to a podcast this morning talking about Ange leaving Forest, and you know, it was Steve Bruce talking about, listen, you got to hit the ground running. You got to win games early. That's not that's an outcome. There's not even a way that says, okay, do you know what? I'll sacrifice my principles and I'll do it this way, because this way is not guaranteed to win any games either. So I wonder if the actual mindset of I've got to win the games is I'm actually can't lose the games, and I'd be okay with saying you have to win because it produces a better type of spectacle. But I feel as if going back to the patterns, going back to control, it's a lot of joysticking to stop spaces rather than joysticking to try and get you opportunities.
yeah, totally. Look, there's there's things from a coach's point of view and a player's point of view. There's things you can control directly, all right, and that mostly is around yourself. There's things that you can't control whatsoever, which we all know, and that could be anything from the weather to the pitch to the opponent. And there's also things that in the middle of that that sometimes we forget that are things that we can influence. And so I might not be able to control the opponent exactly, but I might be able to influence their decisions sometimes. So I think if we constantly try to control every part of this game, we're eventually going to become unstuck. Like you say, if you say to a manager, you've got to go get some results, then that's pretty vague. It's pretty outcome based. It doesn't tell you anything about the process to get it. And usually in football, it probably intimates that you should be compact. You should use set plays. You should, instead of passing that one into a through midfield that might just break a line, you don't take it and you go over the lines, and you kind of, and maybe you'll come out the right side of a 50-50 sort of contest. There's a certain part of football that sees that as control,
Mm.
and I don't. And I think there's a certain part of football that likes that, especially in Britain, I would say, forgive that kind of team losing than an Ange Postecoglou team losing. Do you know what I mean? Because maybe there was some hairy, scary moments throughout, or maybe there was, the keeper has to Cruyff it at some point because something difficult happened. So you have this kind of scary narrative around the game that, they're playing with fire kind of thing. So I don't think you can control outcomes. I think you can control your preparation, um and you can influence other parts of your preparation for these games. If I'm sorry to kind of take it one step further again, but if I'm hiring Ange Postecoglou for a job, I know what I'm hiring him for. I wrote about Ange in Coaching Through Superiorities, which was published about 6 months ago. I wrote about Ange when he was at Tottenham and still at Tottenham about, he's nailed his colours to the mast. That's the way he's going to be. Should he be a little bit more flexible? We could talk about that all day long, but you know what you're going to get, just like you know what you're going to get if you hire Guardiola, Mourinho, for the most part, at least, all that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure what version of him they wanted. If they just wanted him to be Steve Bruce, but with Ange Postecoglou, over the door. So yeah, this results come at the end of a process, and what we can do is have some control and some influence over that process.
1,000,000%. And I think that's the piece that, like, does the Ange conversation, does it matter in youth, amateur, grassroots level coaching? I think actually it does, because I think it eventually seeps down into risk averse, and it's like, okay, inexpansive. He's got a reputation of the way he plays football, that some are uncomfortable with because of the way he sets up, which I think actually football needs way more of that to open people's eyes. Because how many coaches are going out on a Saturday thinking that they're set up like Pep, but actually setting up like a pretty conservative style of football that's going to bore the life out of everyone. But I don't want to get off on a tangent, but going back to the point I want to make, the I think this goes back to the training ground. I think this actually, the biggest impact on this in grassroots, amateur, everything, is if you're risk averse, then you're actually then going to go back on the training ground and produce the same A to B to C training that everyone's doing. I don't like, what's your thoughts? I don't see a lot of risk taking, thinking outside the box, critical thinking on a training pitch when I look at session design these days.
Yeah, that kind of saddens me, because we've been beating a drum about dynamic sessions and not being risk averse, especially in youth football, and I think some of the messages that hit home, like if I'm a youth coach who doesn't know better, don't get me wrong, I'm not hammering anyone, but if I don't know any better and I'm listening to the BBC or Talksport or whatever it is on the drive to training or to a game, and you think unanimously the football world thinks that this is how you win football games or this is how you don't lose football games. And as soon as my goalkeeper, the centre back drops to the 6 yard box and that pass happens, everyone's jumping all over that because, oh, no, that's not how you do it. You've kind of been fed this narrative. And it's really easy to point out those goals, for example, those goals you might concede when you are playing out, even in the pro game. But they are few and far between. When you really think about it, you would it's not like you will find a goal from a corner kick every weekend, obviously, in every league. You will find a goal from um,
Across, pull from
a co
across
a
every
com yeah, of course, but so I'm defending, so I want my team to be compact. Being compact defensively is a um irrefutable football principle, right? But if you are the most perfect version of your compactness, you will find you will concede goals at some point against someone because football is too random to allow you to just completely control that. You know what I mean? And you'll see that far more often than you will see sort of the goalkeeper gives a centre half gives it away and they score. Now you will find it, but not as often as people think. And my idea has always been this: you get your reward from doing it, but later. You know what I mean? In terms of the space you create, the chances. Your forwards are running into bigger spaces, and you know you've disrupted an opponent and all that sort of stuff. Um, so for youth football, and this is where I make a big difference. Like if you are Sean Dyche going into that job now, do whatever the hell you want. Like do whatever you want. Like win a game on a Saturday, however best you think you need to win a game, because that's probably why you've been brought in the door, because of your style and methods and all that. But the inspiration youth coaches should take, in my eyes, should be the Ange Postecoglou idea, the one that is risk taking or appears to be risk taking, the one that demands technical excellence, the one that demands playing under pressure. Because if your players are going to get better, they're going to need pressure to do that. And there's no greater pressure than on the edge of your own box on a Saturday morning when, you know what I mean, you have to retain that pass, or you have to, you know, turn it around the corner first time or whatever it might be. And the support play for you has to be that bit better to survive that. Now, if you could, in my eyes, if you can put players through that most weeks, you're starting to sort of, they talk about diamonds need pressure, don't they, to develop. To me, that's something similar, rather than every goalkeeper I've ever spoken to. If I say to that goalkeeper, play it short, let's just keep this really simple language wise. Play it short unless you think it's risky. Then you just go wherever, right? Their idea of what is risky or pressurized or whatever will be different. So is risky, you put the ball down, you look at the centre back, the striker makes a little move, a little kind of a little nudge that he's going to press as soon as that ball goes. Is that risk? Does that ball then deserve to go 60 meters up the pitch and fight for second balls? Or do you insist that they play it anyway? You know what I mean? And insist that they go through that process. That to me is yeah, using pressure to become better with the ball, for example. And using the ball to become better at pressing as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, moving on to the kind of coach development side, and going back to your point there about talk sport, listening to talk sport, and I listen to, on the YouTube algorithm occasionally, probably at least once a day, one of those interviews of hot take from Simon Jordan, and I'll click on it to listen. Uh, but I also feel very, very strongly that if that's the only type of football you're consuming as a coach, there's a problem. I went to had my parent teacher meeting last week with my 10-year-old, and my kid's good at reading, thank God. And she said the only thing is that with the books he's picking up are these fancy book type comics today. So she called it That's dessert reading. That's, you got to get your fundamentals. You got to read the 200 pager with no pictures. That's where he's going to get better. That's where he's going to start thinking about it. Which I thought was brilliant. And I thought that Simon Jordan match of the day, Monday Night Football to an extent overlap. That's dessert listening. That's kind of, the football fan in you. But I think you as a coach, I think if you just consume that with your timelines, your algorithms, your X, your Instagram, whatever it is, if that's the only way, you're molding into a certain type of a philosophy that you probably aren't even aware of. That's what I think. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, the algorithm analogy is good there because we are forced into an echo chamber of the content we pick up, and probably the people who pick up our content are kind of in our echo chamber as well because you do get refed the same things. There is very much. I think you speak to managers who will coach in Spain and that'll coach in Italy and things like that, and they when they come to England and I assume the States as well, they kind of crave a press conference, for example, where they're asked about not about their formation or whether the strikers fit, but about a style of pressing, about like someone to sit down with Ange Postecoglou and say, genuinely talk us through this. Like, talk us through the reason. Joe Hart spoke about working with him at Celtic and having a moment of clarity in his 30s with Ange because of a way he framed um, Joe Hart's role. Who was moved on, of course, from Man City, wasn't he, for not being good enough with his feet. Um, so I think most managers would sort of crave that. I know you and I would crave that, and probably do crave that when we're running a team and someone goes to us. Um, "Oh, I think you should have substituted the right winger and not the left winger." And you go, "Oh, that's really great. Thank you for that." Or they go, "Oh, yeah." Or you go, "Why did your fullback do that? Why were you, I don't know, asking your midfield player to do something else?" Or that, like that press and trap presentation that we did. Why is it? What if, that for as nice as my press and trap idea sounds, when it gets broken, you've got a problem. You know what I mean? But again, that's football, and that's your trade off from something. So if I open up the middle for passes and it stays open up because of technical excellence or positional error or a million things, then you know what then? Those are the kind of things that I want to go into with people. Um, so if you can imagine the elite of the elite of the elite kind of having their craft, I guess, dumbed down to dessert, I guess, for the most part. Um, and that's why I think when those programs, when it does come around where the guys are the sharp edge of it. I know Gary O'Neill was on Monday Night Football again last night, and to be fair, every once in a while they do have someone on there that really, um, yeah, validates where football has gone the last sort of 10 or 15 years. Yeah, I find that much more interesting than a fan debate or something like that. Although I'm not immune to it, I quite, I'm a football fan as well. I jump off the couch when my team score. I want my boy to wear his kit at the weekend, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, there's more to it. And if all we hear is armchair stuff, that I'm afraid that's kind of where you get stuck. You get stuck with little buzz phrases, and there's far more to it.
It brings us actually along nicely to talk about your work individually with coaches, because I think there has been a realization or awareness of this kind of growth, and I think people want a little bit more from their coaching experience. And I think with those echo chambers, the top end of coaches that I observe or that I talk to off air are all telling me who they're talking to, what they're working on. They're always looking beyond what they're doing. And the area of individual coach support seems to have grown, seems to have picked up in the last 2, 3, 4 years, definitely on my radar anyway. What's your take on why that is?
I would suggest for me, my pivotal moment came COVID, actually a small bit before COVID kind of really took over, and it kind of is, I'm sure it did for you as well in different ways. It kind of made people look at everything, especially learning. I found in coaching, learning and coaching kind of exploded. There was courses everywhere, wasn't there? Everything went online, everything went on Zoom, podcasts, all that sort of stuff. And the one-to-one stuff, my business model, for absolutely a want of a better word, it has always been to respond to the need of people. And what I found is, if I could put myself in someone else's shoes, well, what do I think they need? So I always felt when I was developing, when I was a younger coach, that you either coached alongside someone who helped you get better, or you did a course. You know what I mean? And there was nothing in between. I didn't find, and I found out that Dick Bate did my A license, 2008 or nine or something like that, and we found out that he had someone at the back of the crowd, at the back of the lecture hall, and probably on the pitch as well, that was feeding back to him on his performance. At that time, Dick must have been 60 plus and was blowing people away that had been in the game 20 years with his detail. You're nodding along because you've been exposed to it, and you think, okay, what does he need help with? I went into a role quite young. I was still in my 20s when I became an academy manager. Not the biggest job in football or the biggest academy or anything like that. But I do remember one of the directors coming to me and saying, "How are you getting better?" As in, like you're kind of you're top of the organizational chart. Who's making you better? Because theoretically, everyone's sort of less experienced or less knowledgeable or whatever. And that stuck with me, and we started to do a lot of we started to share knowledge a little bit more. So the guy who did the under 16s was the best sports scientist in the building by a long way. He ran the sports science department in a college, so he did some work with us around that sort of thing. And I guess the whole system evolved whereby if you were good at something and I needed help with it, I would go to you. And that idea of one-to-one stuff, it then goes online, and it then goes a little bit different. And finally, when you speak to, I might have mentioned this to you before. I don't know if it was sort of recorded or not. But speaking to a a professional player, a striker, he had played throughout the leagues. He had played internationally. I remember him telling me that his development finished when he was 20 or 21. Like, his development finished when he got a pro contract because he just ended up in a team that needed to win. Um, and I found in subsequent years, you have similar conversations with elite coaches, that you end up in probably your own echo chamber again, with your own people around you all the time, same voices, same noise, same all that, but no one to turn to when you had a difficulty in something, or if you had a blind spot around something. So I think a lot more elite coaches are now doing it as well. And I don't mean, when I say elite, I'm not just talking about college coaches in your neck of the woods, or PDP coaches in England. I'm talking about champions, like the top of the top guys who have won proper football competitions all over the world. That'll go, I'm not sure about X, and I don't really want to talk to it with my circle. So they reach out, um, and quite often are the best learners, are the most enthusiastic ones, because they're happy not to know stuff.
100%. I mean, the stuff that I could have done a way better podcast if I had a flip the stuff that I can record with the stuff that I can't record. That's the stuff that they tell you, is that, it's a well-known secret that people are, getting a bit of help, but also, like, it you find out real quick in coaching, talking to coaches, is that when you're talking about some issues or challenges, the most common phrase is, "Yeah, they don't teach that in the coaching courses," and that happens so much in both sides of the Atlantic, um, that you just can't get the nuance of your challenge with all the context of what you're dealing with. You can't work that out with 25 people on a Sunday afternoon in July in St. George's or Atlanta, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like coach development for me is kind of every day. It's every moment of every day. And that doesn't mean my head is stuck in something. It means that because it's central to it's your passion and it's your passion and your profession, it very rarely leaves you. We all know that in the game. Um, and so what I'm trying to what my next kind of major project around it is starting next month, to be fair, is looking at that idea of elite coaches. And when we talk about elite coaches, you know, we could be talking from we're talking a huge number of layers of these from A-listers like your Ancelottis and your Klopps and all that sort of stuff. And I don't want to say down to anywhere, but you go to imagine a first team coach in a Bundesliga. Like how good will he be? You know what I mean? Or a WSL head coach, how good will she be? Or whatever it is, you will have different layers of these people, all with different skill sets. So my ambition is sort of to create a an online platform, and this will morph, I'm certain, as it goes along, where I can get X amount of these coaches in a room, get an expert on football, psychology, sociology, leadership, complex systems, whatever it might be, a couple of times a month, get everyone in a room. That presenter is told, you present this as if Jose Mourinho is your audience. You know what I mean? Like you're not pitching it to be understood by all. You're pitching it to be right there, and then connect these people together. So the national team coach of I don't know the 100th best team in the world, is 300,000 people in the corner of Asia will speak to a first team coach in Sweden or
Mhm.
something like that, or in the WSL in this whatever it might be, and just connect these and have a vibrant room where elite people can speak to other elite people outside their own circle, outside their own echo chamber, around whatever ideas, problems, venting. Um, Gary, how did you deal with this problem? You know, um, if I have a behavioral issue in my team, I might go to my assistant coach, but probably I'd be better going to a secondary school teacher. Do you know what I mean? Or if you had a confidence issue with your striker, you're probably better talking to, I don't know, a psychologist or a lawyer talking to you about persuasion or whatever it might be. And just offering the ones that don't get tested day to day a place to come and be tested and tested and challenged, but also hopefully engage and love every minute of it. That's the plan.
Yeah, it's brilliant. No, I mean, you are speaking even from experience of being on a couple of them calls, like you are absolutely brilliant at the facilitation of creating the environment where people want to talk freely and people want to share really, really good content. My concern of your model from a business side is how on earth do you put this out without 500 people going, and then all of a sudden, how do you manage that not to, well, not to spread yourself thin, but how do you keep the quality high? Uh, yeah. Mm.
And like, sorry, to you respond to the need. You know what I mean? And I've whether that's I remember when I first landed in Africa to run an academy in Africa, and the guy who was sort of bankrolling it was an American, and he said, "What are you going to do if?" And I say, "Well, I'll just have to pivot." You know what I mean? And you just have to do things the other way. If if I if it was me 15 years ago and I heard me talking about this program, I would be unqualified for it, but want to be on it. But I don't think you should throw those guys away either. I think, if there's an element, if there's a webinar part and there is a safe support part, then we can, we can pivot through that. But that's, like I say, in November I've got a pilot of it. I've got about 200 people from across the elite game, across the world,
Wow.
um, signed up, and there's still probably 3 weeks to go till we start. And like, Gary, you roll it out and you take some feedback and you roll it out a little bit better, and you just keep moving the needle. So
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Um, okay, obvious question. We'll finish it up. You have coaches. How do they join it if there's spaces left?
yeah, look, it's linked. Like, I'm on X and LinkedIn in the main. In the main, this has gone on LinkedIn. And look, a pilot's a pilot. If someone ends up in the room who's got a C license and coaches the under seven somewhere, then it's one of those things. I'm not going to start vetting people like I'm at the airport. Let's be honest. But um, it is pitched for the elite ones, and certainly by the time we're getting, we've rolled our sleeves up and we're getting in a room, for those kind of safe space conversations or whatever it might be, it will be the top ones. LinkedIn is probably the best for it. But look, if anyone wants to reach out to me, X, LinkedIn, probably your best bet.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. And we'll stick the information below. Ray, top class. I just want to come on. I want you to jump on again and talk about this because, like I said, I think it. I'm not just saying this because you're in front of me, but I think football coaching really, really needs this right now. Really needs people to challenge and support, and kind of do that in this simultaneously in a way that can get people outside that bubble and hopefully keep progressing this game. But you're doing a
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, I hope so. And look, let's see how this shapes up over the next few months for sure. And yeah, look, it's really exciting. It's really exciting because I get the pleasure not only of facilitating, as you say, and people will think, well, what can Gary Carnina, what can Ray Power teach Carlo Ancelotti? And it's not about that. It's about s- different people having different skill sets and different ideas, and just sometimes a slight different angle on something that might just, spark a thought or spark a process, um, in those coaches, which helps move them because it's 1% at that level. So yeah, I'm excited, and I'll certainly check back in and let you know how it's going.
Top class, Ray. Thank you so much. By the way, I think I could teach Carlo Ancelotti a hell of a lot, maybe more than 10, 15%.
Yeah, that's your next pod then. Yeah, next week, Gary on his own teaching Carlo Ancelotti all he needs to know.
Quality, Ray. Thank you. We'll do it again.
That's-
Thanks so much.
Cheers, guys.